Fantastic. All right, well, yeah, just essentially welcome everyone to this session. It's great to know that we've got so many of you here joining us today to find out more about the new Colombo Plan Scholarship and what it can do for you and how it can change you for the better for the future. So I'd want to start the meeting by just acknowledging that we're all coming together from different parts of New South Wales, perhaps even Australia or overseas. The land that I'm hosting on today is the land of the Wiradjuri, so I'd just like to acknowledge that. But I also want to extend that acknowledgement to the traditional custodians of the lands where you all might be meeting from today. And I welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are joining us in today's session. I also would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of the Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing culture and connection to the lands and waters of this region. So thanks everyone for coming, and now we'll jump into the session. So you all, I think, hopefully received an email from CSU Global a week or so ago letting you know that this opportunity has come up. So you've been chosen because you're a very particular unique group to the university that's succeeding well in your studies. You're achieving great grades. You also meet other criteria such as your citizenship, the degree that you're studying, and the age requirements as well. So if you were wondering how you were picked out of the whole university cohort, we were looking at the demographics of the students that we were trying to target. So what is the new Colombo Plan Scholarship? It's an initiative of the Australian government that was set up in, I think, about 2014 by what is now known as DFAT, and the aim of it is to start linking our students early on in their careers to the Indo Pacific. So what we need to do is make sure that Australia is well placed in part of the Indo Pacific, so we're not sitting outside of that, we're certainly a part of it. They're major trading partners with the Indo Pacific. We've got lots of learning opportunities there. Politically, we're also very aligned to all our neighbours in that region. So we want to start off by making our students understand that they're a part of that region, and there are lots of opportunities for you to engage in that way as well. The NCP, as you see on that slide, has probably said it a lot more succinctly and clearly than I have, but that's my description of it in a nutshell. With the new Colombo Plan Scholarship, as I mentioned, it is targeting the Indo-Pacific region. So within that, there's about 40 countries that you can choose to undertake your scholarship in. So anywhere from Southeast Asia to the Cook Islands, Bangladesh, Mongolia, you can see all the list of them there. There's some pretty amazing places there. Dylan, who's joining us today, was a scholar in 2019 and he studied in Papua New Guinea. So he'll tell you a little bit more about that experience after I've done explaining the process of the scholarship to you. So where you will end up being located will depend on lots of factors. One is where you feel that you would like to have a genuine connection, if there's an area that you've always had an interest in, but also one that aligns with the university that can host you and support your study needs as well. So those are the types of things to consider when you're looking at the region. What can you study under the new Colombo Plan Scholarship? There's three components to it. There's a language tuition component, so you can do some language training before you start your study. There's the study component, which aligns with our session, so generally around anywhere between 10 to 13 weeks of full-time study at a host university. And there's also an internship component as well. So that internship component can run at any time during your scholarship period. So you can start it before your study period, you can have your internship running during your study period, or you can have it after you've completed your study period and you can complete an internship after that. So the host university could be one of Charles Sturt University's exchange partners. So we have a number of partners in the Indo-Pacific region, but that's not to mean that you're limited to those universities. If you find a university, say in Macau, that you see has a really good program in whatever it is that you're studying at the moment, then you can nominate to study at that university. The admission process to that and the application process to your host university will be a little bit different, but it does open up lots of different areas where you can study. So don't think you're only limited to our exchange partners. Again, linking back to Dylan, Unitec in Papua New Guinea was not one of our exchange partners, but we managed to work with CSU staff and academics and find out where they had linkages, and they brought the two of us together, so to speak. The study period that you undertake would be studying full time, so that means you're matching 3 to 4 CSU subjects to what you can take at your host university. So they would normally be subjects that you would be undertaking in the same session as if you were at home, so to speak. So for instance, if you decided to undertake your study component in session 2 next year, that's when you will be looking at what subjects you would normally be taking in session 2 and then matching them to what the host university can provide as well. With the language tuition, that has to be undertaken in country, so you can't do language classes in Australia and be supported under the scholarship for that. That's not to say that we don't endorse or encourage you to do that. We'd like you to learn as much of the language as you can before you go away, but it's not supported under the scholarship. So that pre-departure language tuition can be something as downloading Duolingo and getting a few key phrases, or it can be linking up with people in your community from that region who might give you some private lessons. But once you land in country, you'll enrol at a language provider institution and do a short course with them to bring you up to sort of basic proficiency level. The language tuition is not designed to allow you or give you the competency to study in that language. Your study will be taken in English. So don't feel that you've got that challenge of learning a new language and studying in that language. You'll still be studying in English when you get to your host university. And as I said, your internship can be taken at any time during the whole process. And I think, and if Dylan nods or shakes his head, you can undertake more than one internship, and your internship can be in a different location as well from your primary host location. Thanks, Dylan. So who are we looking for? The type of students that we want to undertake study is someone who's really quite adventurous, wants to really discover what their opportunities are, both as a CSU student but as a young Australian as well, and someone who wants to really engage in the opportunities that they have. So it's a really immersive experience. We don't want you to go over with sort of the lens of a tourist. We want you to go over with the lens of someone who really wants to get to know the community and develop some deep relationships with the people, the communities, the institutions that you meet there. In saying that, there are some key criteria that the government has set that we need you to meet before we can nominate you through the process. So A is that you have to have been nominated to the NCP by your home university. So that's Sturt University. So the stage of doing that is completing the nomination form, which some of you might have received. I haven't put it up online because I didn't want to confuse or worry people with the criteria, because it can seem a little bit daunting, but it will be available after this session, or you can email CSU Global to download it. So you are nominated, you nominate yourself first by completing a series of questions, and then from that pool, we choose the top 10 to 13 students to put forward to the next stage. And I'll go through those stages in a little while as well. You must be an Australian citizen, and you must not be a current citizen or permanent resident of your proposed primary location. So if you were to go and study in Indonesia, you can't hold Indonesian citizenship as well as Australian citizenship. You have to be enrolled in and undertaking a bachelor or bachelor honours degree onshore at an Australian university. So that's basically, hopefully all of you students here are in an undergraduate degree and you won't have completed that study before you start your scholarship. The normal criteria for the next one is in the process of changing, so that's why there's an asterisk behind it. So in past years, the Secretariat has been looking for students who are aged between 18 and 28 years of age, and that's as of the 1st of January 2021. However, they are recognising that not all student cohorts meet that demographic, so they this year are looking at expanding that a little bit further. So for non-Indigenous students, they're raising that age limit to 30. And for Indigenous students, they're raising that age limit to 35. So if you received an email from me and you just had a little bit of a shock thinking I'm not 28, I'm over 28, you can still be nominated through this process. You also should have achieved a minimum grade of 70. I know that at CSU we don't use that terminology, so it's probably not familiar to you, but it works out to be a grade point average of approximately 5. And that's what they're looking for in applicants. You'll also see that that has an asterisk next to it as well, because given the circumstances that we find ourselves in with COVID and the disruption that it's caused to many students in their studies, the Secretariat also recognises that some students may have been disadvantaged this session, and because of that their grades might have suffered a little bit. So if your grades aren't at that level but you're still really keen to apply, just have a conversation with CSU Global, myself or Shane or any of the other staff, and we can talk you through that. Essentially, we're still looking for students who have a high academic competency and those who aren't at risk of failing. For students, the other offshoot of the grade is due to the timing of this process, you may not have received your session 1 grades at the time of nominating. So that means that what your grades are today may not be a true reflection of what your grades will be in another 2 or 3 months' time. They might have gone higher. So that's another consideration that the Secretariat have. So don't panic about that if you don't feel you're at that point. Still keep this conversation going with CSU Global and we'll work out if we can get you through. If you don't have that GPA, there is a requirement to submit a supplementary reference with your application, but we can go into that in more detail at another time. You can't have received an NCP scholarship previously. So I don't know if any of you have been on a CSU Global Mobility program before, one of our short programs. If you've received a mobility grant, you could still be eligible, but if you've received a scholarship, you can't. So don't worry about too much if you're not sure if you have or you haven't. We can have a look at your records and see. But basically, it really applies to people like Dylan who have been a scholar before. He can't apply again and get another scholarship. And the last one is that you can't be an employee of DFAT that administers the NCP. So I don't know what your backgrounds are, but that's just one of the criteria there. Another big question that students have is what the scholarships cover. So it will vary between students depending on the type of activities you're undertaking while you're away and where you'll be studying. So I can't put a dollar figure on it because it will vary for each of you. But the types of expenses that should be covered are your study component. So that includes your tuition fees to your host university, your full-time language training, a travel allowance, so it helps you with your costs of your flights, etc. An establishment allowance, so helping you once you arrive in country just to get you on your feet there. A scholarship allowance, which is a stipend that you receive, I think it's either on a monthly or fortnightly basis. Dylan's nodding, yeah. And should you need access to it, mental health service allowance as well. On top of that, there are other benefits that are awarded to you in a non-financial sense. So you're awarded complimentary insurance by the government. You're allocated a case manager who will be there to support you throughout the process, in addition to the CSU Global staff and also your host location staff as well, and some students may receive private sector sponsorship. So there are some organisations in countries that want to help support this program, so they're willing to put some financial support into their scholars as well. So the next stage, and really the main stage that's going to get you to the next point, is the application process. So there are 3 stages to it. So there's the nomination stage, the application stage, and the interview stage. So the nomination is what I touched on very briefly before. You complete a nomination form, submit it to CSU Global by the 3rd of July. And from that, we will look at those pool of applications and determine who we can put through to the next stage. So you'll be nominated shortly after that, whether you're going to go through to the application stage. If you are one of the students going through to the application stage, you'll need to obtain a police check. So that's a national police check. The purpose for that is because many countries require this as part of the visa process. So the NCP liked you to have some of those hurdles out of the way first, knowing that they would be able to place you in the country, knowing that you are eligible for a visa. Now, if you get a finding on your police check that shows that there is something on your record, that does not automatically disqualify you from still being eligible. It depends on the severity of the recording. So again, if that's something that's happened to you and you are not sure whether you want to proceed, you can have a private conversation with CSU Global and let us know what your concerns are. But yeah, the police checks aren't there necessarily to stop people going. It's just enabling us to make sure that the provisions are in place to help support you to the next stage. So once you're nominated by Sturt University to the NCP panel, you'll receive communication directly from them about moving to the next stage, which is an online application. We are allowed to normally nominate up to 10 students. This year we're allowed to nominate up to 13 students. So that's the maximum amount of students that any Australian university is able to nominate to go through to the next stage. So in August, applications will open, and that's where you'll complete your formal online application. The questions that you find in your online application should be the same or very close to the questions that you'll be asked to address in your nomination form. At the nomination stage, we don't offer you assistance in completing those questions, but should you get through to the online application stage, we'll work with you to refine those answers and coach you through and give you some feedback so that when you go to put in your online application, you've used that nomination as a draft piece and you've worked with us and other people within your own support network as well, if you want, to really make a polished online application. So in September, students will be shortlisted, and those shortlisted students will be asked to attend an interview. The interviews will be online as far as we know this year, and they're held in front of a panel normally made up of government officials, NCP officials, some in-country organisations and supporters of the NCP scholarship. If you're successful in getting through that stage, you'll be notified in November of the outcome and you'll be invited to, hopefully by then, a few things will be lifted and you'll be able to go to a public awards ceremony to formally acknowledge your success. If you're not successful, you'll also be notified by the Secretariat as well. So, and then December, scholars are announced, and from January onwards, you are able to start undertaking your scholarship piece. So there are a few cogs and wheels that happen behind the scenes during that timeline, like linking you up with your host university, etc. But I don't want to overwhelm you with too many processes now. So just we will help you through all those stages, I guess is the short nutshell answer to that. So these are the 4 questions that you'll be addressing in your nomination form, and then you should be addressing those in your online applications as well. So one is academic excellence. The weighting of this has changed slightly. I think they're not, again, due to COVID and lots of other reasons and feedback, they're not necessarily looking for the highest academic achievers. So they do want students who are achieving well, but that's not the only thing that they're looking for. So they've sort of changed the weighting of that question around a little bit. Then they're asking about your leadership and engagement in the community. So what are you doing in the community that makes you stand out as a leader amongst your peers and amongst the community? And are there activities that you undertake in the community as well that helps them and helps you engage in that area? Adaptability and resilience is the third one, and that's looking at how well you can cope with, I guess, things that are thrown to you along the way. So that's sometimes for people that's quite a difficult question to answer. Some of them have had more challenges than others, but there's different ways of looking at that in regards to the question. So for example, resilience, all of you will be able to attest to being able to get through your studies during this COVID time that we're having. So it just, it makes you frame the way you look at these questions in regards to not just physical resilience, but emotional resilience and how you met those challenges and how you overcame them. And then the fourth one is the ability to contribute to the NCP strategic objectives and goals. That's quite a tricky one, I think, for people who are unfamiliar with the NCP program. So it just takes a little bit of research on your part to have a look at what those objectives are and then address those in your questions. As I mentioned earlier, you'll also be required to provide 3 references if you're three references if you don't meet that GPA requirement, or 2 references if you're at that GPA requirement, and everyone will have to complete a police check. So the main points that I'd like you to take away today is that this is just the very first step in the stage of becoming a new Colombo Plan Scholar. It can seem really daunting. It is a long process, but a lot of that process is waiting. A lot of that process is taken out of your hands. So if it has piqued your interest, the next thing for you to do is get in touch with CSU Global and say, yep, okay, I'm ready to take the next step. So we look at what country you want to study in, we look at what your discipline area is and how we can match that up, and start thinking about where you would like to undertake an internship, what type of activities would you like to do, how does that align with your career goals and your professional objectives as well. Don't be afraid to reach out as often as you feel you need to, and that's reaching out to the CSU Global Office, but people like Dylan, who's our ambassador, but other NCP scholars that we've had are also happy to help you out and give you their expertise and their opinions on it as well. And we are already proud of you as CSU students, so we take great pride in our students and in our scholars. So just remember that, one of you here today, you might be umming and ahhing about it and feeling a little bit nervous and thinking, that couldn't be me. It most definitely could. All the students that we've ever dealt with through this process have all been, as equally deserving. Some just haven't been successful. So please don't be put off by the process. We're here to help you every step of the way. So I'm going to stop sharing. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. So Sally has asked a question that she said, do you nominate ourselves? Yes. So we have already chosen the students that we would like to hear from by meeting that criteria. So if you want to take it forward, you simply have to complete the form. You don't need an additional reference or anything like that at this early stage. You just need to put yourself forward. So back yourself, basically. It is a good idea to contact your course director or your course coordinator to have a conversation with them about your plans to study overseas, just to make sure that that does align with your degree and where you are in your degree at that time. So Sally, I hope that does answer your question. You can try and take yourself off mute and see if I can hear you, but that may not be working. And I'm just going to hand over to Dylan, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end of that as well. So I'm assuming that, yep, that works. Yep. So, okay, I can't hear Dylan, but hopefully you all can. So I'm going to go on mute. So just put up your thumbs to let me know that you can hear Dylan.
You can hear me, everyone? Yeah, awesome. Sorry, Alice, you can't hear me. First thing I'm going to do is just share my screen. So just find the PowerPoint screen. Okay. Okay, everyone can see my shared screen. Okay. Yeah, awesome. So before I start my presentation, I would just like to acknowledge the First Nations people from where I'm speaking from today, the Wiradjuri people here in Wagga Wagga. First of all, also congratulations to everyone here today. You are clearly some smart students and are eligible to apply for the New Colombo Plan. I'm the 2020 Charles Sturt New Colombo Plan Alumni Ambassador and a past New Colombo Plan Scholar, as Alice previously mentioned. The host location I chose to study at was Papua New Guinea. So I went there last year, and then I also undertook another internship in the Solomon Islands at the start of this year. The New Colombo Plan's a fantastic opportunity for undergraduate students across Australia to study in the Indo Pacific region, to live in the region and undertake internships and learn new language. So yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity. So I'm hoping today to just inspire a few of you by sharing my story. Okay, so as Alice mentioned, there's different components to the New Colombo Plan Scholarship. There's the study component, which is the only compulsory component. You have to do at least one session equivalent of study. And then you've got your internship components, which you can do in your host location, or you can also undertake in one of the other 40 countries that the NCP is eligible to go to. And then you can also undertake language training. For my study component, I traveled to the Papua New Guinea University of Technology in semester 2 last year, session 2 last year. And that's where I undertook a semester exchange, my honours research and language training. So I'm a final year Bachelor of Agricultural Science student. Well, last year I was, I've just did it a bit part-time. So I'm graduating at the end of this semester because I did it, I extended it so I could fit in my New Colombo Plan Scholarship program. But during my session is at PNG Unitech, I enrolled in a couple of face-to-face classes because part of the New Colombo Plan Scholarship, you've got to at least enroll in one face-to-face class. But I wasn't really doing the normal kind of session exchange where you would do 4 classes because I was doing my honours research. During my honours research, I just was in the labs most of the time at the university. I was living on campus, and I really got to mix with all the students and make a heap of friends. And I think that's a big part of the New Colombo Plan, is just building people-to-people connections in the country you go to. And then for my language training, I learnt Pokpisin, which is just Pidgin pretty much. And I did that by organising a one-on-one tutor. So it wasn't really through like an institution. I just found someone within the campus to give me language training, and that was all covered through the NCP. So that was a great opportunity. If you have a look here, this is just the gate of the university where I spent most of my time. In PNG, I was living on campus. Depending what country you go to, you don't have to live on campus, just depending on restrictions and things like that. You can also live out with a family, or if you find like an Airbnb somewhere near your university. It's just a photo of some of my friends I made, my classmates. One of the subjects I was enrolled in, I went on a 1-week field trip throughout the PNG Highlands, visited lots of farms and things like that. So that was a great experience. All my classmates were really friendly and super keen to learn about me and Australia and everything like that. So it's a real good opportunity to share a bit about yourself and where you come from with your classmates, and then learn a lot from them as well. It's just another photo of my classmates in front of some tea plantations in the back there. And then this was towards the end of my semester exchange. We had to do presentations on all our research projects. So I did a presentation on my honours research, and it came a long way by when I first started my session there. I didn't know anyone at all, but by the end of it, I had lots of friends. So that was great. And then these couple of photos are just from PNG Independence Day back in September. For my internship component, so I commenced my time in PNG before my session exchange during an internship with Newcrest Mining. and they had actually sponsored my new Colombo Plan Scholarship. So as Alice mentioned, there's some private sector companies that like to sponsor new Colombo Plan Scholarship, which pretty much give you some extra benefits. So they gave me extra financial support and they helped me organize my internship. So that was really, really helpful. And then during your application process, you'll kind of outline where you want to go, which country, and where you want to study, and perhaps any internships you do. But it's pretty flexible. So if you end up undertaking a new Colombo Plan Scholarship program and come across new opportunities, you can kind of tell the NCP about it and they can adjust your program. So you can kind of organize internships while you're on program. You don't have to have it all figured out before you receive the scholarship. So during my time in PNG, I lined up another internship with the Australian High Commission for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade at Solomon Islands. So here's just some photos on this slide of my time there. This is the village I visited for my internship in Solomon Islands. I learned a lot about aid development programs and Australia's role in the Pacific. And yeah, just get involved in the communities a lot. I got to do a lot of work with local villages. Here's just at a Cocoa Research Institute. And then this photo on the right, just me in front of some Australian funded kindergarten classrooms in the Solomon Islands. And yeah, so it's really going to be a culturally immersive experience. You don't have to just think it's just for study and internships and that. You get a lot of free time. So like on the weekends and that, you'll organize trips, and for your friends you meet and things like that, you'll get to undertake some really awesome culturally immersive experiences. Alice touched on this before, but just some points from me why you should apply. Firstly, to develop both professionally and personally. You'll develop new skills that set you apart from the rest. All these employers are really looking for these soft skills these days. So for undertaking a study abroad experience, especially for a program such as the New Colombo Plan, employers kind of know you have those skills, which will really help with your job applications when you finish your degree. You also establish enduring networks throughout not only Australia, but the Indo Pacific and your host locations where you travel to, which you can then draw upon and leverage throughout your career. You experience new cultures, learn new languages, and gain new perspectives, which has been a big thing for me, just gaining a greater perspective. And yeah, it really opens up your mind, and a lot of opportunities come from that. You contribute towards pursuing Australia's national interest. The Indo Pacific region's a big kind of area of Australian priority right now, is really building relationships with the region. And yeah, open up windows to opportunities you otherwise wouldn't know existed. And just on that slide in the bottom corner is just a photo of me with Julie Bishop, who is, those of you might know, she was the former Foreign Affairs Minister for Australia, and she actually founded the New Colombo Plan back in 2014. Tips for the application process. So firstly, pretty much just be your authentic self. It might seem like it's a super kind of prestigious program, but everyone's deserving of it. And if you just be yourself and not try to make yourself out to be something you're not, that will really help in your application. Know the New Colombo Plan and be able to effectively communicate how you contribute to its goals and objectives, which I think is the last criteria on the application, is how you will actually contribute to the New Colombo Plan. So although it's got all these great benefits for you, it's also importantly about how you can contribute to the New Colombo Plan and its goals. Address each criteria carefully and seek support throughout your application. So through CSU Global or myself or the Career Development Office at CSU. I know during my application process, I went to the CSU Career Development and they helped me with drafts of my application, and also when I got to the interview stage, they helped do mock interviews, which prepared me really well. Demonstrate that you're open-minded, curious, and willing to challenge yourself. and focus on demonstrating your potential. So we're all university students. Sometimes we don't have the biggest and best resumes, but the new Colombo Plan, they are aware of that. So they just want to see and hear about your aspirations and what you're hoping to achieve, more so than what you have already achieved. So that's another good point to consider. And then, yeah, a lot of opportunities when you return to Australia. So increased employability, a pretty obvious one. Continued opportunity to engage in the Indo Pacific space, exclusive NCP alumni events and opportunities, e.g., for example, the NCP Ambassador Program, which I'm a part of. And yeah, these last few months, there's been a lot of online webinars and that aimed at just exclusive to NCP alumni for that offer professional development opportunities and the opportunity to network, which has been awesome. And yeah, there's many more, which I can't really think of right now, but yeah, by undertaking a new Colombo Plan Scholarship program, you develop so much professionally and personally, and it just really sets you apart from the rest. So then when you return to Australia, you are, yeah, opened up to a whole new world. And yeah, so thank you and good luck pretty much. If any of you want to find out more about the application process in detail, you can get in touch with Alice and she'll help link you up with me via email, and I'll be happy to assist you. But for now, I'll leave it at that. And if you have any questions, just put in the chat box and I'll give my thumbs up, and hopefully Alice realizes that I'm all finished.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. All done. Perfect. So this seems to be somehow working, even though I don't know what you're saying, but I'm sure it was great. So we just open it up now. If you've got any questions, fire away in the chat, and I'll just go through them as you have questions. But hopefully we've answered most of the things that you've been thinking about. One other thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that your course director can also perhaps give you some ideas of where might be a good place for you to study. Our academics are always doing research all over the world, and they have collaborations going on in all sorts of different areas. So they could be a good person to reach out to as well. If you're having difficulty narrowing down your choice, perhaps reach out to them and say, look, do you have any contacts in the Indo Pacific that would align with our study as well, even if it's just to find out if you can get an internship through any of their contacts. Okay, so some questions. Distance educations are definitely eligible to apply. You just have to know that when you go to your host university, you will be studying full time. So instead of perhaps you might normally undertake 2 subjects per session, the minimum you can undertake during your program is 3 subjects or 4 subjects. So the advantage actually of doing this as a distance education student is that it will accelerate you that little bit quicker through your degree. So it means you come back and you're just that little step ahead of where you might be had you have just, continued down your normal pathway. But yes, definitely distance education students are eligible and encouraged to apply. We have had 1, 2 distance education students, I think, be successful. So it's certainly not a disadvantage to anyone. The NCP Secretariat is looking for diversity this year. So, and that's, where diversity extends to the way you study as well. Everyone's a bit quiet today. Don't have any other questions. No? You all look pretty happy? Well, not happy, but some of you look a bit confused. Some of you look, like you're a bit excited about the next thought. So that's good to see. Both very perfectly natural ways to feel. So if there isn't any other questions, I'll let us all go a little bit early, but don't think that this is the end of the conversation. Sally, no, internships aren't compulsory. It's just an added opportunity for you to take advantage to. But again, you won't be disadvantaged in your application process if you can't nominate an internship. For some people, they don't have the time. For some people, they've got internship commitments elsewhere, or it just doesn't meet up with their plan. So that's absolutely fine. We've had students undertake internships and students not undertake internships under the scholarship.
Yeah, so you can undertake up to 6 months internship in the new Colombo Plan Scholarship, but not compulsory.
And the language component isn't compulsory either. The only compulsory part is the full-time study for the host university semester or our session. So that's the only compulsory part. If you don't, and some people can't do the language tuition. For example, we had a student, Lacey, who studied in Bhutan last year, and there was no recognised language tuition institution that could provide the language tuition for her. So she did a little bit of research before she went and got a little bit of language and then picked it up through the university. So it's not a compulsory requirement. If you don't know who your course director is, David, I can point you in the right direction, or otherwise you can simply send an email to ask@csu.edu.au, that's Student Central, and just point out in that email that you're looking to apply for the scholarship and would like to reach out to your course director to ask them some questions about that. Okay, Sally, yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, it is a big, I guess, sacrifice in some ways for students to make to go away and leave their jobs and their study for such a long time. So it is unfortunately not going to be the right match for everybody, but that's not to say that mobility experiences aren't open to you. We also get funding from the Secretariat to support our shorter mobility programs as well. So you might have seen that our students go away in their university break for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and they undertake different programs through that. So if a semester away is too long, don't think that that's the end of your international opportunities. There's certainly other things that you can do in a shorter time frame, and we can give you more advice about that as well. Mick, I will put the nomination form up in the Facebook events page, or I can email it to you. If you go into when did we have our last session? Tuesday. If you go into Tuesday's event, the nomination form is already up on there. So you can certainly download it from there. I just didn't want to put it up beforehand because it could be a bit confusing for everyone, but hopefully we've sort of talked through the questions and the form, so it won't be as daunting for you now. Just waiting to see if anyone's got any final questions. Looks like we're all good. Any last words, Dylan?
Yeah, no, just definitely consider applying, because I think when I was where all you guys are, I wasn't too sure whether I was going to apply. I was kind of put off about from the competitiveness of it, but I'm so grateful that I applied, and just believe in yourself and seek support, and yeah, it will all be worth it.
Thanks, Dylan. Kate, you can't split your study component into 2 locations, but you can do your internship in a different location. So yeah, you could study in Malaysia for your study component, but then you could go to somewhere like Hong Kong and do your internship there. So you can have a secondary location for your internship, but not for the study component. Alrighty. I think we are done by the look of it. All right, we're going to call it a day. Thanks everyone again for coming. I know we've scheduled this right in the middle of final assignments and exams, so if I've taken you away from that preparation, I appreciate your commitment to us, but I want you to get back and do really well in those exams so you can boost your GPA, so you're even more competitive when it comes to that application stage. But yeah, parting message is don't stop the process here. Get back in touch with CSU Global either on Facebook or via email, and we'll keep the conversation going and get you through to the second stage, the third stage, and maybe 2021 you'll be here in Dylan's place talking to the next round of students.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I do know the NCP is really seeking diversity amongst the scholars this next round, and Sturt University as a regional university is definitely a uni they're looking to get more scholars from. So yeah, you've all got a good little advantage there.
Great. All right. Thanks everyone for your time, and goodbye. And if this recording works, I'll put it up online. If it doesn't, I'll send you the link to the earlier week's one. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Peace.